I was going to ask if you wanted me to do it, if you're going to do it. Y'all, you got it? Awesome. Thank you. When it gets to be about 5 minutes, I'll come turn all the mics on. We're just saving the batteries right now. That's not the slide of the video. There you go. It's coming down the HDMI line too.
Hit by an IED blast. Whereas women are more likely to experience sexual trauma or sexual assaults. And within the VA and the military, we call that MST, or military sexual trauma. So are there different types of trauma? And the answer is yes. So one type of trauma is the very single one-time episode of trauma, like we defined it, where, for example, you got in a car accident and that was the trauma you went through. Those people may or may not go on to develop PTSD, as we'll talk about later. Another type of trauma, though, is recurring trauma that happens over the course of your lifetime. So some people, many veterans included, may have grown up in a chaotic household where there was abuse or they didn't have access to food regularly. And that's a cumulative trauma that then leads to maybe, as a teenager, they're in a physical assault, and then in their 20s, they have a sexual assault, and then they join the military and they were in an IED blast or were shot at. This is cumulative trauma, and sometimes it might lead to a disorder we call complex PTSD, or even disorders called personality disorders, one of which would be borderline personality disorder. So this would be something to think about in terms of, has the veteran experienced lots of trauma over their lifetime or one specific trauma? Because that can be relevant in terms of the type of treatment that you do to get the person better. All of us are different. Not everyone reacts the same after a trauma. So two people could have the exact same trauma and react totally differently. For example, some people may have an experience like a car accident where afterwards they're totally fine. Others may have many of the features of PTSD for a brief period and then be better after a couple of weeks. And then a smaller segment of people would have features of PTSD that last longer than a month, and that's what we actually would define as post-traumatic stress disorder.
I just think that a lot of veterans feel misunderstood. I think it's a stigma too that you shouldn't ask for help. You're supposed to be strong. Same with mental health when it comes to veterans. So I think for so long I was so embarrassed and tried to hide it. And then when I got help, it's like it set me free. I didn't have to be embarrassed anymore. So I will tell my story as many times as I can if it helps save another person. Like, I will do it forever. My name is Jessica Case, and I'm a U.S. Navy veteran, and I live in Black Mountain, North Carolina. I'm a single mom of 3 boys. My soon-to-be 14-year-old is a wild child. Easton, the 10-year-old, is all into basketball, really likes to cook steak, and he actually does pretty good at it. And then Noxon is 8, and he is my baby. Overall, they're great kids. I've been very blessed with great kids. Every choice I make is because of my kids. I was stationed on the USS Ronald Reagan and the USS Nimitz in San Diego, California, and I did 2.5 years and got injured. When I moved back, I met my 2 youngest dad, and we were together for 10 years, and due to substance use and untreated mental health, he was very abusive. I was to the point where he was kicking me out with 3 children, and I Googled, single mom, disabled veteran, help, and I called this 1-800 number, and Brandon answered the phone.
I'm Brandon Davis. I served in the U.S. Army from 2003 to 2012, and I worked for Veteran Services of the Carolinas, and specifically the program NC Serves. NC Serves currently serves all 100 counties of North Carolina. We believe that looking at healthcare as a total package is someone's overall health is what will ultimately drive success going forward. I believe what makes me good at my job is that I've been there. I have been homeless. I've been without a job, looking for help and being unable to find the resources that were out there. I spoke to Jessie the first time on the phone. She had been told by her ex that she wasn't eligible for anything. There wasn't anything out there for her. So I made it my mission to ensure that Jessie knew exactly what was out there for her, that she could in fact get benefits. She could find a career and purpose again.
Obviously, at first, it seemed too good to be true. All the gaslighting that, makes you feel crazy. So I'm calling and asking for help, and to have somebody that actually is like, okay, yeah, let me help you and believe you. It's pretty awesome.
NC Serves is unique because when you call our coordination center, you can expect to either speak to a veteran themselves, a family member of a veteran, or a trained mental health professional. We only want to help you achieve overall better health and ensure that you and your family are safe and healthy.
And I feel like from then on, it was just adrenaline. And I don't think I've stopped since. It was everything that I could do to improve my life and to improve my kids' life. So now I'm a peer support specialist for Veteran Services of the Carolinas, and I go to school at Mars Hill for social work. I want to help veterans in any way I can.
We often tell our teammates that we will never talk to somebody on a good day. The power shut off. There's no food in the house. If you're in need of help, please don't hesitate to call us. We're all brothers and sisters in arms. We're all here to support you.
Military sexual trauma, also known as MST, is a term used by the VA to refer to sexual harassment or threatening sexual harassment, an experience that a lot of veterans, the stats are 1 in 3 women and 1 in 50 men have reported to their VA provider that they've had this experience. Oftentimes, people think that military sexual trauma, and it has to be that I was raped or I was assaulted. And it's a lot lower levels of experiences that can qualify as that. So an example would be you're sitting at your desk while you were in the military, and you have a higher ranking or same ranking person that starts massaging your shoulders and you don't want that, or rubbing up against you inappropriately, all right? Or touching you inappropriately, or making sexual comments like towards you that you don't want. All those fall underneath the umbrella of MST. This can occur
Everyone,
either on
we're about
base
5
or
minutes
off base.
out.
It can occur
Please start
by
making your
someone
way
that
to
they
your
know or
seats.
someone that they didn't know, which can include a family member, a close
Make that
friend,
about 3.
a significant other or partner. For a lot of veterans that we see at the VA, it actually is someone that they know. It normally is someone that is either same rank or higher rank. A lot of veterans have reported that MST occurred sometime during their boot camp. However, we know that it can happen during any range of time during someone's time in service. Amongst the older veteran population, what we notice is that it has been years since this event has occurred. The oldest veteran I've seen she was a part of the Women Army Corps, and the event occurred in the 50s, and I saw her when she was in her early 70s. The provider referred her for a mental health referral, and it was only in then asking her a series of questions that she actually disclosed that this was an experience that she had.
Attention, carry, colors, ready, cut, forward, march. Colors, halt, right wheel, march. Forward, march, colors, halt, present, colors.
Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry, colors, ready, cut, counter march, march. Colors. halt, right, face, forward, march. Colors, halt, fall out.
Transition today. This meeting is dedicated to the memory of the thousands of North Carolina veterans we have lost to suicide and to their families. Yesterday was 9/11, and I would ask you that we take a moment of silence to recognize those who lost their lives on 9/11, all of the firefighters, the first responders, EMS, law enforcement, and all of those who have served since then and have answered the call. Thank you, and please remember all of those that are still serving today. We are going to do our presentation of colors at this time. If you will, please stand.
Colors. Hope. Raise land. Hump. Order. Hump.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Close ranks. Halt. Forward. Halt. Left. 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 Halt. Left. 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 Left.
You may be seated. We are not normally fortunate enough to have someone to post our colors, if you are wondering why you saw that twice. Please, as a courtesy to our viewers, when you have questions, please ask for a microphone. We do have those available to you. We want everyone to be able to hear your questions. They may have the same ones. First today, we have Mayor Mitch Colvin for some opening remarks. Welcome, Mayor Colvin.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Certainly honor and a privilege to be here. Special thanks to Greer Martin, the Secretary of the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, and to FTCC for hosting this wonderful event. And welcome to the city of Fayetteville. My name is Mitch Colvin. I am proudly serving as mayor of our wonderful can-do city. I'm honored to welcome you today to today's meeting of the North Carolina Governor's Working Group for Service Members, Veterans, and their families. For nearly 20 years, the Governor's Working Group has been a remarkable example of collaboration across federal, state, and community organizations, all working together to meet the diverse needs of our veterans and their families. Fayetteville is known as a can-do city, and as we are all proud to say, we are the largest neighbor to the largest military installation in the world. And it has been understood for many decades the vital importance of supporting our service members, their veterans, and their families. When you combine together, all together, you have a recipe for success and gaining support each and every veteran deserves. Today is especially meaningful to host you here at the Fayetteville Technical Community College, a place that is deeply committed to engaging with the support of the military community and our neighbors. The mission of the Governor's Working Group is essential to bringing together expertise, fostering partnerships, and taking action to address critical issues like homelessness, substance use, and mental health. And I know our community can be a vital support element in this mission. The group's quarterly meetings like this one provide an invaluable space for sharing knowledge, tracking progress, and continuing the work that positively impacts the lives of so many across our state, and for us, our friends and our neighbors and our loved ones. What makes the Governor's Working Group so effective is understanding that to truly serve our veterans, we must go where they are. Fayetteville is not just a military town. We are a growing and vibrant community that recognizes and respects the incredible service and sacrifice of our military population. It is known that have many goals and aspirations for our city. A couple that I'd like to mention that is gaining traction amongst our city council and in our community is developing an innovation and entrepreneurship district within the city and creating more home ownership in our community. These are just two key elements that we can leverage our homegrown initiatives to benefit so many across our community, which includes our active duty service members and our veterans. With Fort Liberty just down the street, many organizations across our community, many respected here today, want to play a vital role in improving the quality of life for the men and women who have served our nation. We are incredibly proud of the work being done here in Fayetteville, and we know that this is only the beginning through collaboration in what is happening today, and will continue to make a difference. The issues facing our veterans and their families are complex, but through the dedication of this group and other organizations and a focus on the action, we are moving the needle forward. And I want to thank again each of you for your commitment. I see Senator Val Applewhite, also a veteran and a great representative in Raleigh. And it's through the hard work of our local, state, and other officials that we will work together to weather the challenges that we have in housing, healthcare, employment, and community support, that we're able to ensure those who have served our nation honorably and those who deserve opportunities to have a great quality of life. Again, welcome to Fayetteville. I know that this can-do city can do more to work with you, and we look forward to a productive and meaningful discussion about the progress that we will make in our city and our community together. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Mayor Colvin, for your support. And next up, we have Secretary Greer Martin. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much, and thanks to everyone for being here today. Mayor Colvin, thank you for welcoming us to your city. My father was stationed at Fort Bragg way back in the day, and I first came to then Fort Bragg and came to Fayetteville as a young Army ROTC cadet 35 years ago, which tells you about how old I am. And I remember the feeling, that pit in my stomach that I had driving to Fayetteville, to Fort Bragg, knowing what was in store for me that summer, knowing that I was coming to the home of the airborne. And the airborne forces in the Army hold themselves to a higher standard, a standard of excellence. And now every time I've come to Fayetteville, to Fort Bragg, and then Fort Liberty as part of my Army Reserve career, I get that same feeling in the pit of my stomach, whether it was as a lieutenant, field grade officer, or as secretary, or as DOD employee. I still get nervous because I know that I'm going to be held to a higher standard when I come to Fayetteville and when I come to Fort Liberty. That's what your city means to me. And so driving down from Raleigh today, got that same feeling in my stomach. I've got to be on my best, give my best performance today. And so I hope that spirit of excellence, Mr. Mayor, that your city instills in all of us will pervade all of us today as we do this important work. I spent most of last week shuffling paper, dealing with a cranky General Assembly, and dealing with bureaucratic things. And in all the jobs we do, even when we take direct care of veterans, sometimes that can lead us to think that that's the focus of our work. Signing our name, hitting send on an email, hitting delete on an email. But I had the opportunity yesterday to go to the presentation of a new home provided by the home builders of Wake County and North Carolina to the family of a sailor who had been killed in action about 6 years ago. And seeing both the joy and the sadness on the widow and their son's eyes reminded me why we're all at this very, very important work. So I had a bad attitude, and then I went to that event yesterday, and that set me mostly straight. And then the closer I got, Mr. Mayor, to your city, my attitude is fully adjusted. I'm ready to do some great work for our veterans. The Governor's Working Group has been around for a good long while now and has done some great work. But the environment has changed. We're mostly out of Iraq, out of Afghanistan, and less engaged in the world than we have been in the past. So we don't have as many new combat veterans being generated. But we still got men and women in harm's way, both abroad and at home, and men and women who are transitioning into civilian life. And they have needs, and it's important that we here in North Carolina continue the important work of this Governor's Working Group. I'm still kind of, as we say in the military, the FNG in my job as secretary. I see a few folks laughing because they know what that means. I'm not going to repeat it. But I've been at it long enough to where I can't use that as an excuse anymore. So I hope all of y'all will, either as an aside today or through an email or call or come visit us at the department in Raleigh, let me know what your vision is for what this group can be doing. How do we need to change our focus, change our activities? What are we doing right? What are our sustains? What are our maintains? What are our improves? That sort of thing. I need to hear from all of y'all, and we need to come together and figure out how we continue to do this important work for veterans. So I've already, I think, gone over my time limit, so I'll stop here. Mr. Mayor, thanks for welcoming us to your city. Most importantly, thanks to everyone who's traveled here to be a part of this, and also thanks to everyone online taking time out of your busy days to work for North Carolina's veterans.
Thank you so much. We look forward to doing this good work with you. All right, I am ready to introduce our panel and Mr. Joel Brown, who's going to moderate for us today. Please come on up on the stage. All of our panelists, please join him. Today we're going to talk about transition. I was just thinking this morning when I was getting ready, and I don't know if you know Dr. Harold Cudler, who actually was one of the founding members of the Governor's Working Group, started this in 2006 when I myself was transitioning, and it was very, very difficult for me. I had no idea. I didn't even know what transition meant. And they were actually putting this group together. Dr. Harold Cudler and Flo Stein and Dr. Lee Fang were working to break down barriers for veterans who needed to seek out mental health care. So that transition was tough for me. I didn't even know I needed mental health care. So I look forward to hearing the panel. And Joel, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to see you here in the audience. Let me be one of the many who have welcomed you to Fayetteville Tech this afternoon. We're so happy to have you inside the Rand Center. Again, my name is Joel Brown. I'm a news anchor at ABC 11 Eyewitness News. I anchor our noon newscast and our 4 o'clock newscast every day, except today, because I have an excused absence because I wanted to be here. This is our North Carolina's Working Group Team Transitions panel. We're going to be exploring and engaging family, community supports for veterans. We're going to be focusing in on the support services systems in place for military service members transitioning into civilian life. The primary challenges faced during this transition and potential solutions to make the process smoother. Why are we taking the time to do this today? Because there are about 200,000 military service members that transition from their military lives to civilian life each year. It's a big number. And taking some time to really home in on specific services aimed at making that transition smoother seemed like a worthwhile way to spend an afternoon. So we've got an expert panel here to walk us through some of this. Let us meet them. To my immediate left, that is Dr. Christina Vair. She is a psychologist and whole health program director at the Salisbury VAMC. In the middle there is Scot McCosh. He is a familiar face here at Fayetteville Tech. He is the Senior Director of Military and Veterans Programs at Fayetteville Tech Community College. And then at the end, Command Sergeant Major Greg Seymour. He is Garrison Command Sergeant Major at Fort Liberty. Greet our panel, please, with a round of applause. Panel, thanks for being here. Christina, I'm going to start with you. You are the Whole Health Program Director. I want to talk about this concept of whole health. It's a growing focus point at the VA, and I think it can be really helpful in our conversation today, talking about mental health supports, healthcare services, employment, career development, education and training. Whole health encompasses all of those things.
Absolutely. So pleasure to be here with everyone today and appreciate the opportunity to speak a little bit about how this may be a helpful framework for our conversation this afternoon. So for those of you who are not aware, whole health is really VA's approach to healthcare in general. So this isn't just something that's happening even here in the state of North Carolina, but for our veterans across the country. We've recognized over the last many years that there are some challenges that are particularly, I think, unique to the veteran population, but things that, if you weren't aware already, the VA is the largest healthcare organization in the United States. So many of the things that we do in the VA not only potentially have the opportunity to benefit the health and well-being of those who've served, but also our communities in general. But whole health is really about how we tailor care to the unique veteran. So we have a circle of health model you'll see there on the screen. Thank you for advancing the slides, where it places each and every individual at the center of their health and well-being. So that's such an important part of what the VA has to offer post-transition for those veterans who qualify for VA healthcare, is really tailoring a plan of care where we're meeting the veteran where they're at, where we're really approaching them based on their values, based on the unique strengths and challenges that they may have experienced, whether they've just recently transitioned out of their active service or whether that may have been many, many decades ago. So whole health takes into consideration that it's not just the absence of disease that helps someone be healthy, but how do we provide services, whether that's within the proverbial 4 walls of the VA or through community partnerships that really focus the veteran on their mind, body, and spirit. So I think that's an important way of thinking about how we might be able to offer care to those who are transitioning and going through some potential challenges there, or those who just seek to be healthy and well.
And a part of that circle is finding your community, finding your people, whether
Absolutely.
It's family, friends, school, people at a Fayetteville Tech Community College. Scot McCosh, how's whole health? Is it on your radar here?
Absolutely, Joel, and thanks for the question, and thanks and welcome to Fayetteville Tech and the center of the universe. So Yes, I think education, what we realize with our adult learners and our transitioning veterans in particular, transitioning military and veteran students, is that when they come for education, they're really coming to find themselves all over again. And that involves the whole person, whether that be their mental health, whether that's their career development, whether that's academic pursuits. Sometimes, finding health care. Many times, veteran benefits for education are all that person has is an income. So they may not have a job, they've left the military, they're finding a new identity, and they come to our campus looking for one of our many programs, a way to find what's next. They're using the basic allowance for housing that comes with their post 9/11 GI Bill to make sure they've got a place to live. They use their benefits to pay for classes. They're looking for part-time jobs, either on campus or off. And so we're constantly talking about the holistic student, holistic veteran, holistic military member or family member. And I think what's unique in Fayetteville and why this conversation across North Carolina is so important is the collaborative efforts that we have to say, hey, we want the community, the word community and community college, we want our veteran service organizations to be here. And so one of the good news stories that I like to talk about, one of our table members over here, but Veterans Bridge Home and Team RWB, they're on our campus on a regular basis, so that when students have a need, it's not just go Google to find a resource or go call this number, but let me introduce you to one of my friends in the community. Hey, let's go for a run, or we've now have yoga offered on FTCC through Team RWB. So a place where veterans can go and find holistic health while they're looking for that next step in their educational and career journey.
Sergeant Major, we talked about the VA really embracing this concept of whole health. I'm wondering what it looks like on post at Fort Liberty.
Well, Joe, thanks for having us. Everyone, thanks for having me out here. First and foremost, I don't know who authorized that picture of me, but we're going to have a talk about that. Right? That does not fall in the health domain for me. So our war fighters are very important in today's society, as you well know. To express our world is in a chaos, as we see on social media and on the news all the time. So holistic health and fitness is where the Army has focused our attentions to, where it's the human domain and the spiritual domain that focuses on the spiritual aspects of the religious efforts that we provide for the soldiers. And whether it's physical or mental health, that's also another human domain part that we're focusing on just as much. So yes, holistic whole health is very important on Fort Liberty.
Okay, so that's some of the ideal that's driving this conversation. Let's get into some specifics and maybe some basics. Christina, what healthcare services are available to veterans through the VA and other providers right now?
So VA healthcare, again, not available necessarily to everyone who served, but with the PACT Act, which I imagine some people in the room are familiar with, we're increasingly enrolling veterans from across service eras and provide really wraparound services, whether that's primary care, many types of evidence-informed or evidence-based treatments for mental health conditions. We provide specialty services. And I think what's really important is that when the VA isn't able to offer that care in a timely fashion per the Mission Act, we are able to work with our community partners to make sure that a veteran can get access to care that's either closer to home or that's delivered again in a more timely fashion. But something that's really exciting about what Whole Health does, and really ties into what Scott was referencing with Team RWB, is that the VA also provides services for well-being. So it's a healthcare organization, yes, and we want to make sure if someone has a particular diagnosis, needs a medication or a procedure, that they have access to those kinds of traditional services or conventional care, but we also offer complementary approaches. So the VA has started to offer things like acupuncture. We provide yoga, Tai Chi, mindfulness and meditation. So really embracing, again, that whole person approach. So it's not just those traditional, conventional types of care, but also broadening the spectrum of services to include these more difficult to access in our community services.
For sure. What about specific community programs? Are there any specifically tailored toward veterans and their families?
Oh, absolutely. Although I would have to say that some of my community partners here could probably speak to some in this area. But throughout the state of North Carolina, I think we have abundant resources that are really leveraging the relationship between community members and the VA. So that's, I think, something that's, again, really useful about this whole health model is if you look at that outer circle, it says community. And I like to think that whomever the brilliant people were that came up with this really recognizes that the community holds everything together. I think it really brings the big picture into play and helps us as a large healthcare organization find people that can do things that sometimes we cannot. Like, for example, I know of a number of programs throughout the state of North Carolina that deliver equine therapy. I don't think the Federal Service is going to buy horses anytime soon, but there's some great research that supports that animal-assisted therapies can be very valuable. So we have community partners that are offering some of that care, and the VA can help veterans connect to services such as that.
Okay, it's a huge organization and can facilitate a lot of things.
Absolutely.
Sergeant Major, if you can't answer any of my questions, please feel free to jump in. I want this to be a free-flowing conversation. I'll just try to keep it moving. But I wanted to ask you specifically what programs existed to help veterans translate their military skills into civilian job opportunities.
So, so with that, we have numerous programs on the installation. One of our community, which is ACS, Army Community Service, we offer a wide ranges of resources that are available not only to service members, but also to spouses. We have job placement opportunities. For service members, to answer the question, when they go through the working group process with the Career Skills Program and things of that nature, we help translate their military training into what is viable to make them a little bit more marketable, so to make it onto their resume better for the community, for them to transition out.
Okay, for sure. From the military into a civilian job. What if I want to go to...
Those are all free resources that are available.
Absolutely, and a good point to make.
Who doesn't like free?
What about if I want to go to school, Scott McCosh? We know the GI Bill is a great benefit of military service, but the post 9/11 bill covers about 36 months of benefits. What other resources are there to help cover tuition costs until students get their degree?
It's a great question, Joel, and let me help clarify a misnomer. As a GI Bill recipient, and spending that GI Bill so that my daughter could attend Western Carolina University, I saw 36 months and I went, man, I'm a year short, right? 12 times 3 is 36. But an academic year is only 9 months. 9 times 4 is also 36, and therefore the GI, yes, Math 143 here at FTCC, I got to give them props.
Just one of the many benefits.
But bottom line is, it does cover those 4-year degree options, and so that's tremendous. In addition, all of our students that are transitioning military members and our vets apply for the federal financial aid, and you've heard about the FAFSA. We all love that form, and shout out to my financial aid experts here. We actually send at FTCC one of our financial aid experts out to the Liberty Training and Education Center once a week to work with folks to get that financial aid form done so that they can also use their Pell Grant, federal financial aid that they might qualify for in addition to the post 9/11. The state has scholarships. There's private entities with scholarships. This is where Google helps, but absolutely we have some clearinghouses for those to say, hey, specific opportunities for unique situations are there. Obviously, the various chapters, in addition to the post 9/11, we've got Chapter 35 benefits for dependents of those veterans who are 100% disabled. We have additional scholarships through the state and other organizations for the children of combat veterans or 100% disabled students as well. So there are plenty of ways, and one of the things that we try to do here is if you are transitioning or you're a veteran and you want something new in your educational journey, we're going to help you find a way to make it happen.
How many military students going to Fayetteville Tech right now?
Wow, my boss
Cold
is in
question.
here. I want to get this right.
Cold question, or roundabout.
A round number. We're between 3,000 military affiliated.
Yeah. 3,000
and 3,500 total military affiliated students, and that's active duty students that are out at Fort Liberty or anywhere in the world taking courses online. That's our veteran students, and that's our military dependents. And that's a massively diverse community. So I love to tell the story about 4 different military affiliated students in the same class, all receiving different benefits. And if you want to start a fight, that's a great way to make that happen, because the various programs provide different levels of benefit for those students. And one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing is educating not only ourselves on the nuances, but our entire community, faculty and staff, to help them understand that a military dependent and a combat veteran may have a different level of support. Some of the checks come directly to the school, some come directly to the student. And figuring out that is really where we come across. I have the joy of chairing up our military and veterans programs here, and we've kind of rebranded ourselves MVP. We want to connect with our MVP students, but we want to be their advocate to all of these funding resources, primarily the VA, to say, hey, how do we help you navigate this really complex system so that you can get the benefits you've earned?
3,500 thereabouts military affiliated students here at Fayetteville Tech. It seems like a big number. It seems like you would perhaps have some advice for other local schools and universities. I wanted to ask, how can community colleges and universities better support military students?
So I'd love to say transfer to Fayetteville Technical Community College.
Start with that.
No, absolutely. There's some simple things. And I think the first is just acknowledging that every community has military affiliated members. Sure. So it's very easy for us living here at the center of the universe to say, hey, this is a focal point for our community college. But even in the central part of the state, and as Dr. Vair and I were talking beforehand, there in Salisbury, they've got more folks registered in VA healthcare than any place in the state of North Carolina. And, maybe it's Cheerwine. But whatever the reason, we want to acknowledge that there are military and veteran students, military affiliated folks in every community in North Carolina. So I'd say that would be number one. I think the second thing is to have a person and or a place on campus where those folks can go to ask their unique questions. It's not easy to navigate the systems that are veteran benefits always. And so having that person that is the friendly face and having the space where the veteran can go and say, I'm not understanding, I'm struggling. It's a massive cultural shift as well to move from active military service into higher education. Higher ed's a little squishier, as I like to call it. It tends to be a little bit more touchy-feely and not always as black and white. We're exploring some really deep, difficult areas of study. And veterans like things pretty black and white. Give me my orders, let's move forward. I think the other piece, though, even as I say that, is to recognize that each military-affiliated student is unique. Sometimes we say, hey, you wore camouflage and you're the same. And Sergeant Major and I will tell you, Marines aren't the same as Army, right, Sergeant Major?
They're like crayons.
They like right. So we talk about that all of the time. That every experience is unique, and if we can remember that, I think that's another piece of this puzzle. But our North Carolina schools, I believe, lead the way. We're in the process right now, working with our great 58, our 58 community colleges across North Carolina, in particular those community colleges outside major military installations, to create an ecosystem of higher education institutions and workforce development institutions that can share best practices with each other as we reach out to that military-connected community.
Okay, so it's an open conversation. Sergeant Major's mic working?
Hello.
There it is. It felt like I had a feel like I cut you off, like you wanted to add something when Scott said something.
I did, Joe. So I just, that's very impressive, sir. I mean, if math is good on your part for Fayetteville Tech, you impressed me. I might want to transfer to Fayetteville Tech based off your math skills there. It impresses me. Like I arrived here at the time Fort Bragg in 1997 to see where we were and to where we are now. It's truly impressive, the evolution that we've came. I say that to say this is that the Montgomery GI Bill, when I first came in, it was originally the be all you can be, And when you watch the commercials, it was like the GI Bill, and so it gave me a sense of purpose in the beginning. So it was one of the reasons why I joined was because of the Montgomery GI Bill. And then as evolution came, the post 9/11 bill came out. So now I've transferred all of my benefits to my kids. So my children, my daughter is 11 and my son is 15. So when they come to the age of being able to go, they'll be able to use those benefits as well. So for me, I'm 47 years old, and it's never a bad time to go to college. I'm in college. So I've used my military tuition assistance. And my military tuition assistance is a free resource available to all of the military soldiers. And you know, I'm an old Georgia boy, so you know, I got a lot of southern hospitality. One thing my grandmama always told me was, C's gets degrees. So if you have your military tuition assistance and you maintain your C average, then there's no out-of-pocket expenses for the service member. And that's a free way for the service member to get their education. I'm not saying they need to achieve a C degree by any means. However, as long as they maintain a C average, then the military pays for everything for free for them, and they don't have to use their Montgomery GI Bill. They only are allocated $4,000 per physical year, per credit. So it also, what I educate the service members on is, I know you want probably these big name, high-speed schools, but you know, shop around, do window shopping, figure out what is the cost per credit hour, because that, you know, there's always somebody that, when life happens, where a service member may have to deploy, and or something happens where they may fail a course, and the price of that credit will be very high, and that adds a little bit more stress onto the service member. So normally you'll find some universities, community colleges, things of that nature that may offer, like, I think the lowest I've seen is like $250 per credit hour, which is not bad. And then there's universities that offer PDF books, PDF file books versus buying the hard books, which is also lowers the cost because they don't have to physically buy the books. And then they're obviously living at home and working at their own pace. So military tuition assistance is a great, great resource for folks to use.
When it came down to coming for Army slogans, it came down to be all you can be or C's get degrees, and they went with be all you can be. But you know, it was very close. It was very close. Scott.
But the last thing I'll caveat on that was the education wasn't really promoted that well when I was coming up. And when you saw the enlisted population serving their nation for X amount of years and they would exit the Army, they would go back and we would have to pay unemployment for those service members. An officer comes in, they already have a degree because that's by law, they have to, but they were more marketable versus the enlisted population. So now, as we transitioned over, education is promoted, and we have so many education opportunities now. And with the transition program and things of that nature, our service members now are more marketable on the outside. We have folks that are coming in with degrees now, but the ones that aren't, they're transitioning out with degrees.
Got it. Scott talked about the cultural shift that can be created transitioning from military life into the educational part of civilian life. I'm wondering, Christina, also about the mental health shift that can happen when making these kinds of transitions, and wonder how can families identify signs of mental health challenges in veterans who are transitioning?
Well, I think that's a great question, Joel, for a lot of reasons, in part because it really does connect again to that me at the centerpiece. So recognizing that not every transitioning service member is going to have had the same experience of service or the same experience once they're back into a civilian lifestyle. So I think it's important, and I appreciate Crystal even mentioning her own transition and recognizing that mental health was not something on her radar and yet became an important part of her understanding of her own well-being. So I think some of the things that our community members and families can take into consideration are really just knowing what those resources are that are available for our veterans. So one of the programs provided by the VA is actually called Coaching into Care. And it's a specific resource for family members to learn about how to help a veteran receive care. because so many folks are concerned about stigma. I think especially with mental health conditions. I would like to believe our communities have become more open to talking about mental health concerns, but we know among our service members in particular, there may be issues around owning firearms or having access to other resources if they have a particular diagnosis. So coaching into care is
What's that look like?
Coaching into care is a resource that's available to really help people learn how to ask good questions.
Okay.
Because ultimately, a lot of folks are perhaps not well equipped or fearful about bringing up things that they may observe. So I think it's a great opportunity to let everyone know suicide prevention is a huge part of what the VA does, and September is actually Suicide Prevention Month. I would like to believe we do that 12 months out of the year in VA, but in September in particular, we know we lose far too many service members to suicide. And so that may be a topic that's really uncomfortable for a family member. They might notice that someone is being a little bit more reclusive, or perhaps other signs that we see among people who are experiencing depression could include starting to give away possessions or disengaging from activities or hobbies that they had previously enjoyed. So family members and friends may notice that, but may not feel comfortable with the idea of asking someone if they've thought of ending their own life. So coaching into care can help really provide these resources so that family members, one, are aware of what benefits may be available, because that's, of course, another obstacle. People might be fearful about what kind of bills that they could incur from participating in mental health services. And that's another thing that has happened in the VA in the last year is the Compact Act, which is a specific bill that helps even veterans who are not enrolled in care get financial support for mental health treatment, so that they can report to you, maybe they live 2 hours from the closest VA, but they have a local facility that can help them get mental health treatment. So the Compact Act actually helps our veterans ensure that they don't have costly bills. So sometimes it's just helping family members know that there are services available, but also coaching into care is really about helping people learn how to ask those questions that might be uncomfortable so that they can help people feel understood and well-resourced.
You talked about the stigma. Are people more comfortable? Are folks more comfortable talking about mental health issues?
I've been a psychologist in the VA for 13 years now, and I've noticed that even if there's actually, I like to call this a silver lining of the pandemic. I think that is something that has become more open as a conversation topic. I think that we still have a long ways to go in order for, I think, particularly certain members of our communities. There's data that suggests men in particular may not be as comfortable as women, or may not be socialized to talking about feelings or emotions. We also know that there are different members of our communities that may feel excluded from mental health treatment. There are demographic variables like race or religious background that might make it more or less comfortable. So I think it's also important to point out that it may be talking to someone like a chaplain that could be a foot in the door for a conversation about mental health. So it doesn't always have to be necessarily a mental health professional or a healthcare provider, but other members of our communities that can help start those conversations and help people feel more understood. Because I think one of the things that I can speak to about a lot of the literature around the stigma piece is that people feel very alone in their experience of mental health crises, and feel perhaps that no one would understand what they're going through. So there are so many of us that can start those conversations and help people feel okay about sharing what they may be going through.
Sergeant Major, I'm interested if you had anything to add about the stigma of mental health and talking about it, what it's looking like and sounding like on post. And I know you want to say something, but let me just also ask a question. What role can family and community play in supporting veterans' career transitions?
Say it again, Joe.
What role can family and community play in supporting veterans' career transitions? So I wanted to play on the family piece as well, family and community.
Okay. Well, first I wanted to ask the good doctor there. For a personal, I guess a question, like one, I've never heard of the coaching resource, which I think is phenomenal, which is great. I think there's always different parts of a stigma. So like if I'm having a problem and I'm going to another service member and I'm venting to another service member because they can relate, but the ethical dilemma that I believe most service members embody is, do I tell? Am I going to lose my friend because now I think he's has suicidal ideations? Am I going to be labeled a snitch, right? And then what I call the survivor's guilt, if I don't say something, then something happens to that person, then you feel twice as bad. Now you embodied all of that pain and suffering because you didn't speak up. Now you are more at of a risk to have suicide ideations. But it's like, how do we get to that point to ensuring that it is important for whoever, whether it's another green suitor or another family member, you have to step up and say something. So and that's my question is like, has those been discussions in some of the working groups for the coaching part?
Absolutely, and I think part of it, again, is, and you make such great points in terms of really recognizing the various barriers. It's not because people don't care, typically. It's because of all of the other dilemmas that could come up, ethical or otherwise, feeling like you may ruin a relationship or lose a relationship, and yet, on the other hand, if you don't say something and someone makes a choice like ending their own life, that's a whole other set of consequences. So I think that's something as a community that we can do a better job of. You know, again, pointing to that circle of health model and that community on the outside, each and every one of us has responsibility in being able to even take things that have become kind of hashtags, like it's okay to not be okay, and really applying that and being as difficult as it may be to be vulnerable, because I think that's part of what this conversation is really about, is recognizing vulnerability and how as a society we tend to, I think, especially put our servicemen and women in a category where they can't be vulnerable, right? We train them very much to not to be vulnerable. So opening up those conversations while they're still in active duty and then continuing that on through their transition and their hopeful eventual care within the VA, I think the more that we can do that across our communities, the better we all are.
And I wanted to jump in there as well. You know, this community piece is what it's all about, I think. As a chaplain in the reserve, I know, as Sergeant Major said, you know, we're the one place people can come and vent, and we don't have to, not only don't have to, but can't share that with anybody else, right? It's that absolute confidentiality. It's a really important piece that is unique, I think, to our servicemen, men and women. They have that resource. But again, stigma's there. Here in higher ed, when we have folks that are transitioning or coming back as veterans or family members that are looking for that next chapter, as they begin to explore within themselves, some of these issues come to light. And it's fascinating for me to watch the connectedness, again, holistically, where instructors will reach out to me and say, hey, I got a paper, and the content is something that's alarming. Can we put some resources around this student? That kind of stuff is really powerful. The other thing that we have here is, you know, just you see small groups develop on campus, right? Whether that's the Student Veterans Association, whether that's being part of the unique program of study, right? Whether you're in IT or, you know, a unique program in culinary arts or what have you. And as those communities get tighter, those stories begin to be shared. The mental health issues sometimes come up. We have a mental health counselor here on campus. But what we find oftentimes is because we have a specific veteran center, that folks will come to us and say, hey, I know there's a mental health person, but I feel safe here with other folks that have worn the uniform. And then it's our job to connect the dots and put around them all of the resources. And so, again, I think that community model and the holistic piece is really critical.
Yeah, I was going to ask about what the mental health infrastructure at Fayetteville Tech specifically looked like. You said there is a counseling center and a professional always here. Nothing specifically tailored to military, but you're saying they find it.
They find it, and I think that's what's so unique. You know, we work closely with our mental health professional here on campus, but there's also that sense of, hey, if we're going to be first responders, if you will, to receive some training, so mental health first care, mental health first aid care, et cetera, where folks know what questions to ask and then when to get that help. What I've been fascinated about, and my assistant director of our vet centers here, and watching those folks that have built a relationship, that trust, and then we're able to say, hey, let's find a resource, or I know a person, maybe somebody else at one of these resources in the room, let me call, they're a trusted person. What's unique for us is because they're community-based, oftentimes they'll come to campus and connect with that student, even as we're calling our mental health folks here, just to make sure, we've got somebody on standby. So I think it's a both and it's a wraparound, opportunity. Obviously, the ratios, I mean, just aren't there. It'd be great if we had more of everything, but it's difficult. But when the trust is established, then the vulnerability follows oftentimes, and we begin to see some great progress really in health, which is phenomenal.
And if I may, to that point, I think it's really important, again, as a resource for each and every community member to know about 988 and to be able to dial 988 and know that there's an option specifically for veterans, and someone doesn't have to be in an acute crisis. I think that's another important piece of what is available for everyone in our community, but particularly for servicemen and women, is 988 doesn't mean you're literally in a crisis. It can be available as a resource for someone who's in acute crisis, but it's a resource because each and every VA across the country has a suicide prevention team. And if someone calls 988, even if they're not a veteran enrolled in care, they're going to receive follow-up from our suicide prevention teams. And this is, again, across the country. And that's something that each and every one of us, if we connect with a veteran, even if they're struggling and not necessarily something that we believe is an acute suicidal concern, that's still a resource for our communities.
I'm glad you mentioned it, 24/7, 365. Dr. Vair, one more question on the mental health and access to healthcare piece. We need to talk about challenges, if any, do you see that arise if a veteran postpones signing up and registering in the VA system?
Well, it's always easier to get enrolled in care when you're not in crisis. It's helpful to, I think that's another thing. I've encountered veterans who say, well, I'm really happy with my community care providers. I don't need VA, or I don't deserve VA. That's for, people who've lost limbs or have very serious health concerns. Again, we have, through the PACT Act, expanded access to care for so many veterans, and I think it's really important to acknowledge that the more veterans we have enrolled in care, the more resources Congress gives us to take care of them. So even if a veteran chooses to continue because they have private insurance or they have other access to care, if they enroll in VA, that helps us care for all of our veterans. And so when you're enrolled in care, it's great because if you're in an acute crisis, then we can get you in sooner, faster, again, connect with our community partners if that's not something we can do in a timely fashion in VA. So I think the big piece is find out if you're eligible, get enrolled in care, and do it before you maybe even have an immediate need, whether that's mental health or physical health.
Got it. Scott, you talked a lot about some of the programs offered here at Fayetteville Tech. There's a wide range of programs under Transition Tech. Where can service members, veterans, and their families find information about similar programs available in their local areas? Not everybody's here.
Not everybody's here. And that's what's great about having the Great 58, right? 58 community colleges, part of workforce development in North Carolina, that offer similar programs to Transition Tech. These certificate and certification-based programs oftentimes, through our continuing ed programs, not only our curriculum. So one of the things I want to talk about is what we call the one college model in North Carolina that we're moving to, which is curriculum programs that lead to an associate's degree. We know about it, community colleges. Transferable programs that move into, from the 2-year to the 4-year. But as industry comes to us and says, hey, we need people now, and as transitioning vets, as military-connected students say, I need a job now. Our Transition Tech is a CSP, a career skills program, part of the Skill Bridge program for transitioning vets. And what that allows is, while they're still receiving a check on active duty, is for them to come and begin their training in this new skill set here at the community college so that they are job ready when they leave the military. It's fully funded. It's a phenomenal program. Skill Bridge offers various opportunities for internships and apprenticeships in various industries. So communities have those. They differ based on the workforce needs. One of the things that absolutely I think needs to be said is, as we look out at the participants here in person and online, most of us are folks that work with the military affiliated community every day. And we talk about the need to place folks through Transition Tech and other programs into new career fields. And it's a mental health issue as much as it is a fiscal issue. Hey, I need a check, I need a place, I need a purpose. One of the struggles we have, and I had one of our deans in here earlier, he had to step out, but trying to partner with our academic programs, with our continuing ed programs, and connect them with industry. And one of the things I think is absolutely critical is to get private industry to step up and say, hey, we have to partner with our community colleges, our workforce development. We need to partner with our veteran service organizations. We need to partner with our active duty installations. Because one of the biggest gaps is that 0 to 4 years of experience in getting hired. And so while a service member may come out and have a great military career, many civilian industry partners say, hey, that's not in my field. Yeah, you've gotten great training at some place like Fayetteville Tech, but you don't have any experience. And so now you've got this person that's used their benefits, poured their life into something new, and when they struggle to get that next job, now things begin to spiral. When we have those industry partners, though, and we can put people in early, and they begin to see, hey, I like this, and I'm good at it, and that employer sees, wow, this veteran knows how to show up on time. This veteran knows how to work hard. This veteran knows how to work within a team to achieve a higher goal. Then we see, greater incidences of hiring. And so there are programs out there, SkillBridge, North Carolina apprenticeships that they can start even while they're in service. There are amazing, in addition to tuition assistance, there's credentialing assistance. So as the industry shifts from, hey, you need a 4-year degree, you just may need a credential. There's separate pots of money for that in the active duty community, and then again, many separate programs across the state. But that key piece is connecting to industry to say, where's the job on the back end? And we're trying to every day to work on those partnerships for sure.
Where's the job? Making a connection. Sergeant Major Fort Liberty has a few programs connecting service members to outside employers as they transition out. Can you mention a few of those?
I sure can. So first, foremost, bottom line is number one, Fort Liberty has the #1 ranked transition program in the Army enterprise-wide. We have well over 200 programs in our internship program, and we have our SkillBridge program. We have like a plethora of these programs there. Right now, what we going back to connecting Fort Liberty with industry. Right now, with we have a Troops to Transportation, which is a local service member can learn how to get their CDL license. Okay. And our partnership right now is with our local Amazon facility here. They've agreed to hire on 1,000 service members
from Fort Liberty.
From Fort Liberty. So we're putting soldiers back to work right here locally in the North Carolina area. So just them going through the Troops to Transportation, we're putting them as truck drivers for Amazon and putting them back to work. On Fort Liberty proper, BMW has a facility on base, and we teach them every single thing. BMW from Raleigh comes down. The mechanics, they teach them electrician, changing oil, filters, anything and everything, ins and outs about a BMW. And depending on where the service member, whether they stay local or where one of the graduation ceremonies that I went to, I spoke with one of the soldiers, and he said he was going back home to Oregon. Mm-hmm. And BMW put him back where his home of record was, and got him a job at that location.
Placed him in Oregon.
In an actual job, yep.
Across the country.
Yeah, so our sponsors that we have currently do a phenomenal job in putting soldiers back to work on the installation.
Follow-up for you. The employment programs that are accessible to family members of veterans and service members. So not just the service members, but their family members as well. And then you consider the fact that a lot of these folks and families have to relocate.
Yeah, so we have if this is I'm using a government job as an example, or our daycare services. We have over 14 daycares on post, and the women on there they do a phenomenal job as caretaking for our military children. Now, when I came into this job, I had blinders on and did not realize that the civilians that keep what I like to use the old Motel 6 slogan of keeping the lights on. The civilians on Fort Liberty are phenomenal. Our caretakers are phenomenal. And believe it or not, I look at them as kind of like service members, because our service members have to go and do physical fitness PT roughly around 6:30. Well, our daycare, our caretakers have to get up at that same time.
Yeah.
So those ladies are there, and the doors are open at 5:30 in the morning. Well, if you think about it, they're waking up at 4:30 to get themselves ready and get on the road, and probably even before that. So I applaud those ladies. They're phenomenal. But most of those, and I'm using the caretakers, for example, are spouses that are married to a service member. So if the service member leaves, so does that caretaker. So once they're in the system, we have what is called a MCOM marketplace. So once we identify that spouse PCSing to another location, we go through the pipeline of placing them in another job at their next location. So there's not it's a smooth transition basically. So we have ways to put them back to work as well.
Joel, one of the things we're working at here in the community college is identifying those remote jobs. Where can military family members find employment that they can do from home? And it's absolutely huge. One of our largest programs right now is in cybersecurity. We're partnering across the state in the Carolina Cyber Network, where we're able to work with, I think we're up to 20 colleges and universities that talk about cyber jobs. The need is great. There's a void in the workforce. And so as we train those folks, though, we don't want to lose them from North Carolina, nor do we want them to, when they're service member PCSs, for them to lose a job. So we, again, advocating with industry to talk about remote careers, working alongside our spouses and military dependents to say, hey, we've got opportunities and options. The other fun piece, like Sergeant Major said, is in some of these industry partnerships, we partner with Caliber Collision on fixing all the cars that we soldiers wreck all over the roads all over the country. But they have a draft at the end of the program. So if you do the program with Caliber Collision, they literally say, hey, you're guaranteed a job, and you may end up in Omaha, but the opportunities are there for the folks taking it. So there's all kinds of I think, different ways that we're approaching this. COVID was helpful in the sense of, hey, you can be remote, or maybe you can be remote 3 days a week, but only have to travel to Charlotte from Fayetteville too. And those things are game changing when it talks about military families and stability and ability to find career options in the midst of a lot of transition.
I've almost exhausted all of my questions. Remember, audience, we've got microphones in the audience there. If you're thinking of something or something on your mind, please just raise your hand. Scott, I'm going to ask you one more question while the folks are working their way up for questions. What apprenticeships, paid internships, or certification programs are available to transitioning service members in our state?
Loads, and yet not enough, right? So that's, I think, the easy answer to that, Joel, is to say we start with our skill bridge programs while soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen are still serving. I got them all, space cadets. I mean, the Space Force Guardians. Guardians is the word. That's it. Forgive me. Sorry, Army. Anyway, the opportunities for them in the programs that are across the military installations are many. I think what the community colleges are really trying to do is say, hey, what industry do we partner with already that has come to us and say, hey, we want you to train these folks for this industry. And we're developing those apprenticeships and skills. We have an apprenticeship expert on campus. That's all she does is work in those paid internships. We get some paid apprenticeships and some unpaid internships in local businesses. One of the things we're realizing, and this goes back to the remote jobs, is Fayetteville doesn't have large industry here per se. We are connected to a lot of that, and so we're trying again to work with folks that say, hey, what can our students do from here? The other thing is DoD is a partner. Fort Liberty is one of the largest employers in the area, and so they've now partnered with us and said, hey, how can we connect with your students that are studying in these areas that we need, whether it's HVAC, coming out and fixing systems that are old, or whether it's cybersecurity that says, hey, we need some folks to partner with us to do some things at the entry level that give them experience and then have some federal backing on their resume that says, hey, I interned for DoD. So it's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. Folks in the audience, any questions? We've got Christina, we've got Scott, the Sergeant Major.
Bueller.
And here we are. Mr. Secretary. Let's wait for the mic, sir. Here we go. We want everyone to hear.
A question really for anybody. But Scott, I was really intrigued when you talked about remote work opportunities for military spouses. Spousal employment is something that's, of course, a problem military-wide. And if we're going to hang on to service members, we've got to retain the spouses. We've done a lot of thinking in North Carolina state government about how we can make that occupational transition easier, spousal licensing compacts, that sort of thing. But is there more the state of North Carolina can be doing to promote remote work or other employment opportunities for spouses?
Wow, great question, Mr. Secretary. Yes.
And what is it?
And what is it? Yeah, the follow-on question. I think it really comes down to the creativity, and we're doing the same thing in higher education. So there's this, the pendulum is swinging from industry saying, hey, you need a 4-year degree to come in the door, to saying, hey, knowledge, skills, and abilities are what it's about, credentialing. We love that associate degree as well, but if you can come in and get a certificate and certifications, we'll hire you. They're realizing that part of that is because they need the workforce more quickly. I think the same thing is true when we say, hey, it's cheaper to employ somebody remotely than paying to move them across the state, right, or across the nation. And so beginning to incentivize, I think, for industry to say, hey, you know, we have a need. We have a population that is a ready workforce, but they need to be mobile. And how can we incentivize some of that, I think, with private industry? I think the other piece then is coming back and saying, what are we doing within state and federal government and local government to say, you know, Fayetteville to Raleigh's not a bad commute, but it's costly. And if I need to be in a place overnight or what have you, that gets tough. But if I can work off my laptop, and again, this is where COVID, I think, was absolutely helped us hit a home run, because we realized, hey, you know, I can be in sweatpants and a sport coat and tie and do a lot of great things on my laptop in meetings, and helps my mental health maybe. So I think finding the models, going out and looking for, hey, what are other people doing? Some of it's just saying, how can we get ahead of the power curve? But I think the incentivizing is the real key. How do we do the public-private partnerships to create those opportunities, and then make sure we have the workforce prepared, right? Those military family members ready to step right in. And when you can say to someone, hey, I've got trained folks, and they're going to be phenomenal, and there's incentives here, and it's going to be cheaper for you than to move them, I think we're going to have folks that bite. So I wish I had a more detailed answer, but yeah, that's what I can see happening.
Mr. Secretary, I would have to mutually agree as well. Maybe, you know, I got the hamster in the wheel spinning right now, but I do agree with incentivizing things of that nature. Maybe the initial entry employment, but kind of like a tier program. Like, hey, you come, you know, you're incentivizing, you're working for me. While you're in the program, I need you to accomplish, you know, get these certifications that whatever industry offers to you. And maybe maybe the industry pays for the whole thing, or maybe it's a 70-30, something like that, where you can incentivize and making these spouses, you know, that join the company a little bit more. I totally agree with. So for me, my honest opinion is I've been here for a very long time, and all of my deployments have came out of Fort Liberty. I've got more shrapnel in my body than hip hop artists got in their grill. But I would say one thing, as you can see on social media and things of that nature, we've at times have struggled with trying to get people to enlist in the Army, and then sometimes we have had our ups and flows of retaining people in the Army. So I look at that as like, how do we retain the talent? How do we retain our warfighters for Fort Liberty? I am very, and I might be biased, but I would tell people all the time when our nation calls, they don't dial 911, they dial 910, right? Because anytime they call, we're gone pretty fast. But how do we retain that talent? And my focal point on this takeaway is that we have to focus on the family. If you focus on the family, and incentivizing things, putting the spouses to work and getting them a sense of purpose. That, to me, lowers the stress on the household, and it lowers the stress on the service member. And to me, it ties into mental health, but at the same time, it's very resilient on both parties, on both sides of the household. But at the end of the day, we also have a more of a productive service member who is actually able to focus on their warfighting functions.
And I want to caveat off that when Sergeant Major talked about recruiting as an Army reservist, I think one of the things that we don't do enough of is to recruit to what I call the part-time Army for these transitioning military members and veterans. As they're struggling to find the career choice, as they're struggling to translate their skills into the civilian workforce, while it's part of the transition assistance program, they get a briefing that says, hey, you know, you could go to the reserve or guard. They're just looking at like, hey, I'm trying to get out. Will you sign the paper and can I go? 18 months later, they're coming back to the community college. Their security clearance has now run out. They are struggling with employability. They're coming to a training program. What they know is the military. 83% of the folks that raise their right hand don't do a full 20-year career, right? So they're not getting a check. They may be getting some disability. But what they know is how to put on that uniform and to go in and do those things. And the North Carolina National Guard, Air National Guard, Army Reserve has a huge footprint right here in North Carolina. And it's a great connection. It's a great recruiting tool for us on the federal side, but it's also a mental health thing to say, hey, I'm part of this community. And I'm not only a veteran, but I'm still serving, and I have still reason to go. And I'll be honest, my drill weekend was this last weekend out at Fort Liberty for Civil Affairs and Psychological Command, Psychological Operations Command, and just winded my sails coming back from that. And so I think it's a mutually beneficial opportunity here to say, hey, as we try to employ folks on the civilian side, I think we also need to say, hey, stay in the military on the part-time side as well.
Mr. Secretary, one of the another example is buy-in, making them feel like they're a part of the team. And I use this example that I usually tell people all the time. When we 100 times over, we'll tell a service member, thank you for your service. Whereas an industry owner or business owner or things of that nature, what are you actually doing to show what you actually mean? Like, actions speak louder than words. And what I mean by that is, as you know, Starbucks is a major company that's been around for years. Well, Starbucks corporate had came here to Fort Liberty and actually chose our location and made it the first ever military owned or military oriented location. And when you go into this location, and if you see one of the Brutistas, excuse me for saying it, right? One of them actually has a gold Starbucks apron. And what that shows is that is a Gold Star child, right? That's a Gold Star child. So Starbucks actually took the time to pinpoint that service member, that family member, making them feel a part of the team. So as industry owners, and for me, like, as an NCO, there's a thing that says, I know my soldiers and I'll always place their need above my own. Well, if I have somebody working for me, what exactly is their need, right? And that need is, well, they're a Gold Star family. So whether it's a child or whether it's a widow or a spouse, even if you change the embroidery lettering on your uniform to identify them as a Gold Star spouse or whatever the case may be, those small little things go a long way for an employee, for a service member. That goes a whole long way, and that makes them feel a part of a team. Especially here, like that's how, to me, that's how you retain talent here in North Carolina, doing the little things like that for families.
Where is this Starbucks?
It's on Fort Liberty.
It's on post?
On Fort Liberty. We have a big giant banner.
I do the news. I have never read anything about it. I haven't seen that on television. I feel like that's a good story. I know. Came here to get story ideas.
Joe, I'll buy you some coffee. We can go right after this.
Sounds absolutely perfect. Any more questions before we leave? Over here.
Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Ann Zell. I'm assistant manager at the local NC Works Career Center. Career centers in North Carolina populate over 70 of our 100 counties. Since 1920, when the federal government created the Wagner-Peyser Act, the federal government pays for us to have employer and job seeker services in each state of the United States of America. So we're here ready to help. We do work with the transition technician program that we were talking about earlier. We do help people go to school, and Fayetteville Tech is one of our proud partners in that. So I did want to make sure that everybody knows, come see us. NC Works Career Center, 910-912-1010. 2,400. Thank you.
We asked about progress. We asked about partners. One of your proud partners here.
Absolutely. And NCWorks, those not familiar, but sorry, I'm off. I'm on. Awesome. Wow. Hey. Yes, we're a proud partner of NCWorks, but here's what's so exciting. To watch our students go and visit one of their events or hiring fairs or get their resume looked at or what have you and come back with that job and just to be beaming. Or to host them here. Hey, we need a space. It's exciting. They're an ongoing partner and they do phenomenal work. And again, we get back to this collective community effort. And I think Mr. Secretary goes back to that as well. It takes everybody on the team. It takes this kind of collaborative effort to make things happen.
Please, Madam Senator.
The boss lady.
Thank you so much. The Secretary and I were kind of whispering back and forth about health care for family members once a veteran has ended their service. And I'm retired NCO, so I had TRICARE, and I got my, my family was covered. One of the questions I get in the Senate is health care for spouses and children once the active duty member separates. If you could speak to that or point me in the right direction would be helpful.
Well, I can speak for VA in that there's a lot of limitations, and please recall some of what we're limited by is Congress. So with certain circumstances, so for some veterans who have family members or spouses who are on CHAMP VA, the VA will provide health care. So CHAMP VA is a specific program for spouses and dependent adult children. But of course, the VA also is designed to provide health care for adults. So we don't offer services for children, but I know often, again, through community partnerships, there are often ways of helping connect for needed healthcare services. So I don't know if my colleagues here have other examples.
Yeah, I know one of the ways we here at the community college just help out is through our training program. So we have a dental hygienist program that has an amazing free dental clinic when they're able to do cleanings for some folks. Now it's not full-on healthcare, but it's a community partnership that says, hey, come on in, let our students practice on you, terrifying, but also get you a service that you might not have. So that's one thing that we're able to do along with several of our other programs. Sergeant Major, I don't know if through TAP if there's any additional healthcare for families coming out the door.
I went through the program. I got 2 teeth through the program, actually. So I would tell you it does work. True story, though. Healthcare. So there's always a need for healthcare all the time, especially when a service member transitions out, whether they did 3 years or 20 years. The benefits of doing 20 years for a family is a lot better than obviously somebody for 3 years. So there's always an additional cost, especially if a service member does 3 years. Now, what the resources that are available for a family who only does 3 years, that I am not too educated on, ma'am, so I apologize for that. But the 20 years, the family members are still able to use all their medical facilities on post.
And that's where we recruit them back into the reserve or guard and get them back on TRICARE. But again, that's one answer. Unfortunately, I think we all realize there's just not as much out there for the family members as we'd like to see.
So if I could advocate on a different aspect, and it kind of goes back into retention as well. Believe it or not, Fort Liberty has we're a lot of number ones in a lot of things. And believe it or not, we're far as installation wise, we're the #1 most populated installation in the Army. We tell people think it's Fort Hood, Fort Cavasso, and we're like, no, it's Fort Liberty. With that, in the center of the universe, obviously, the higher senior leaders have done what I like to call reshuffling, and more families are coming here to this installation, to the center of the universe. And what does more families bring? Everyone has a story. Currently, right now, Fort Liberty has the highest exceptionally family member program. We have a lot of special needs military children. And we don't have enough providers, we don't have enough resources. And that, to me, is also how we can retain talent for this installation. That's how we can bring, partnership-wise, I think that's how we need to strengthen our partnership-wise for exception family members between Fort Liberty and the community to take care of our military children in the special needs department. I have a 15-year-old nonverbal child, so I'm a very big advocate for and trying to be the voice for that community. But with that also brings the mother or the father who, whether they're together, separate, things of that nature. There's a lot of stressors that go on with that, and they don't have, we have our own independent resources, but we also got to remember not every single military family lives on the installation. And there's a lot of our families that live off the installation. So I would say within this working group, to disseminate, like example, the coaching part, I had no idea that was a thing and that was available. So how do we bridge that gap? How do we get that information onto the installation so that we can disseminate it out onto our platforms? And one of the ways is our FNWR, which is Family, Military, Welfare, Recreation. We have roughly about 7,000 to 8,000 followers on all of our social media platforms. But we, and NWR's portfolio per se is very large. And I say that because some of the resources are available, which is Army Emergency Relief, which is financial readiness, Army Community Services, which offers a wide range of first-time mothers, things that we send nurses out to a certain house. Like last week we sent one out, they taught them how to properly breastfeed and things of that nature, how to wing the child off. So we have a multitude of resources available on the installation. And I know there's resources off the installation, but we need to get that out to our military families.
Are there any other questions in the back? In the back here.
Hey,
sir. I'm sorry, it was you.
No, it's okay.
I thought you had the mic. Go ahead, please.
Hey, Blake Bourne, the Executive Director of Veterans Bridge Home from Charlotte. We have some teammates here in the Sandhills. Really appreciate everyone's comments. Good to see you, Dr. Vair. Could you ask about, I was struck by, came from the Carey Veterans Benefits Live earlier today, right? And there were several hundred folks lined up looking to access care through VA, looking to, improve their benefits utilization. And it struck me that the generation of veterans that were there in that audience were much older. And when I think about the young, soon-to-be professionals, current students that I saw on the way in here, and the captive audience that are transitioning service members or students using GI Bill and tuition assistance before they enroll in VA, could you talk about how we are or could be improving the continuity and the handoffs between those specific captive audiences so that folks don't fall through the cracks and wait till they're in their 60s to get those benefits and then seek VA care?
Well, I may be off. Oh, there we go. I was going to offer that I think one of the reasons we may be seeing things like what you experienced today, Blake, is due to the PACT Act, right? So one of the effects of the PACT Act was really opening up VA healthcare to generations of veterans who did not qualify for care previously. So for those of you who may not be familiar with one of the aspects of the PACT Act is that anyone who is in country in Vietnam, for example, now qualifies for care. I've encountered so many older veterans who have said, 20 years ago, I walked in, the VA told me I made too much money. Or at the time, I was still employed and on private insurance, and so I didn't qualify for VA care. So I think part of why we are perhaps seeing some of our older veterans enrolling for the first time is they're just now qualified for care. So I think that's an important piece of what Congress has offered us through the PACT Act, is being able to provide care for some of our aging, particularly Vietnam era veterans, but veterans of the Gulf War as well, who are now some in their 40s, 50s, and beyond. That's another generation that even 5-10 years ago may not have qualified for VA care, but because of being in country, even if they were non-combat, they now qualify for care. So I think some of what we can do is make sure that we have advertising. I mean, VA didn't have billboards 10 and 15 years ago, right? But if you drive down many of our interstates throughout the United States, you're now seeing billboards for VA. The PACT Act, I remember I was watching Netflix or Hulu, one of the platforms that has commercials, and there was a VA healthcare commercial. So I think even just helping ensure that we are marketing appropriately and helping many folks dispel myths, since there were so many changes that have happened just in the last 2 years to who qualifies. I think that that's one thing that the federal service can do a better job of, is just marketing, making it clearer, and it's events like the one that you were at today that I think are helping us in service of that.
Yeah, and let me be clear, I think the VA is doing an incredible job. I actually mean upstream, like before, so that we don't wait just for you to do all the pulling rather than us do the pushing.
Yeah, and Blake, again, thanks for what you guys do, and absolutely, and love to be your partner here in the Sandhills with your staff. They're phenomenal. But I think it's as much a stigma about young adults saying, hey, I don't need health care, right, as it is anything else. So again, how do we help them understand the need to, hey, get the paperwork done now, right, with the advocates? And I think that's really the key. Hey, can we hit transitioning service members and let them know who, hey, who coming out qualifies? Boom, and let's get you in on the way out the door. Not sure if it's part of the transition assistance program or not, maybe, but again, there's so much coming at you there. We would love to partner with the VA here, to say, hey, come hit up our veteran students and let's do a, get signed up for healthcare. I think that's great to talk about getting upstream, because again, one of those guys on the reserve side got my TRICARE, hey, VA's the next step, right? And keep waiting.
And I think another thing that is unique in the state of North Carolina is the way that our services are managed at the county level. So the fact that all of the counties pretty much in the state of North Carolina have veteran service offices. I think that is one of the things that is also an opportunity to address that upstreaming if we can. So the VA, it's a cumbersome, large organization. It's a bit of a bureaucracy. And yet the veteran service offices at the county level are often such a great underutilized resource across the state of North Carolina, and something that I think hopefully attracts more of our transitioning servicemen and women to come to North Carolina, is that we have a great infrastructure. So even outside of VA, finding those community partners, yet again a theme of this conversation today, who can help veterans establish whatever the benefits are that they may qualify, get that paperwork piece done, and then we're there for them whenever they need us.
Blake, that was really great. Okay, get a couple more? Right there, sir.
Hello, it's an honor to be here. My name is John Russell, and I work for On Track Wellness Recovery Center. And we do behavioral and mental health, but we specialize in peer support training. So my question is, I also volunteer with the Fayetteville City Police Department, and one of the things that we're finding out is that a lot of homeless individuals, as well as substance abuse, most of the people that we're training are prior military affiliated. They're veterans, and they're going into the field to go help in the communities. So what my question is there any platform maybe, or is there any wording for peer support with you guys? Is there some way that we can get connected, and how would I go about trying to establish some kind of peer support platform in that area?
Absolutely. So the VA actually employs peer specialists. So that is one of the positions throughout VA. And what's, I think, especially amazing about that role is that to be a peer specialist in the VA, not only do you have to have served your country in one way or another, but you have to have had the lived experience of mental illness and recovery. So that's such an amazing way that veterans can connect and serve other veterans. And that was something that came to mind when we were talking about employment, is that there are a lot of ways in which the federal service incentivizes our servicemen and women, as well as their family members, to apply for VA jobs. And the Salisbury system in specific, about 30% of our staff are also veterans. So we do employ peer specialists, and there are great resources on just the va.gov website about our peer specialist positions, but they're typically embedded either in our mental health programs or in primary care throughout VA. So of course it might look different from one VA location to another, but then the other thing I would reference is our healthcare for homeless veterans. So we know that homelessness is a concern among our veteran population. So the Healthcare for Homeless Veterans program, there are often peer specialists who work within that particular service as well. So there are lots of great resources online that I would direct you to find out more and to find perhaps some local points of contact here in Fayetteville.
Good, John. Great question. Thank you. So I'll hand go up right there.
Yeah. So Harold Cudler, and mentioned earlier on, thanks to Crystal, Flo Stein and I, and Mike Lancaster, Worth Bolton, Lee Feng were in the room when we were told we were going to put together something. And we had the advantage of not knowing what we were doing. And that let us have a really wide net of what we might do. And we each worked for big bureaucracies, and not bit bureaucracies, big bureaucracies, right? And so that was a disadvantage, because big bureaucracies, if you asked them, could I do this, could I do that, they would have said no. A lot of what we did was flying under the radar. Listening, and what we did, and you know, it's wonderful to watch you guys talk about, I didn't know you had a barista program, you know, and maybe there'll be a news report on that soon. I had a feeling that maybe there will. We would have spent a whole hour of our meeting just hearing from the barista programmers and people who went through the barista program, and we would be listening and thinking, well, all right, we're not going to start barista programs all over, but what are the principles we're learning from this? And I think one of the key things we did starting in 2005 in our preliminary meetings, and then for more than almost 2 decades now, the principle of partnership, of DoD, VA, state, and community partnership. And somehow in North Carolina, because of our culture, because of the way our counties run things, we're not that top down as a state, we really succeeded. And what you guys are doing is wonderful and beyond anything we could have thought to tell you to do. But still, you're still learning from each other, even now. Coaching into Care has been around for 15 years, but people still don't know about it. And my question is here as the governor's work group, because it's also part of state government now. How does another bureaucracy, even a very benevolent advocacy kind of group, promote more of this partnership? What could this organization be doing from your points of view to keep this interweaving and create a net so well interwoven that nobody could fall through it?
Who wants to take that? Any advice for the working group?
Well, I would say here recently, last week, or actually 2 weeks ago, before I went in my surgery, Fort Liberty just signed an intergovernment service agreement with East Carolina. So we have a partnership with them, and they're doing a phenomenal job. We tested them out a little bit just to see what they can offer as far as resources-wise and things of that nature to help us out. One of the things that they're helping us with is kind of like a smart city innovation things. So there's a multitude of things that we can partner with, but I think the key to it is intergovernment service agreements is to how we bridge that gap.
I think the term that comes to my mind is relationships, right? When we begin to go into the room and say, hey, I know those folks, and I stay in touch with them beyond the meetings. And when we have the relationships, then the information is shared a little bit more. I think, you know, I've talked about several times today the Great 58, right? The 58 community colleges, but I couldn't name 28 of them probably, right? So one of those things is, hey, how do we connect more with the networks we already have, and then share those networks, right? As a guy that has got 23 years of military service, but the VA is still this big, massive thing that is terrifying to me to try to figure out how to navigate. And yet, as a local minister, I've walked people in the doors and held their hand through that care, right? So I think some of it's that relationship, because when I know somebody inside that door and they meet me there, now it's not as scary. I think it's the same thing, we talk about the government, but the government's us, right? So when we begin to say, hey, Raleigh, I know somebody in Raleigh, right, who is there. I know the folks in D.C. I know the people, when Mayor Colvin chooses to come, and we have our local, folks there, and they build the relationships. The other thing for me, and I've got to give Sergeant Major and his command team at the Garrison, as well as Lieutenant General Donahue and 18th Airborne Corps, they show up, right? They come outside of Fort Liberty and say, hey, we want to be connected with the community. And so they're there. They invite us in, and that matters with our active duty personnel. But I think it's that relationship building. How do we do that? And then this working group, I think, can begin to harness the dialogue. Again, technology is great. When we can hang files together, right, somewhere, and then you get into security and all of the other stuff and things. But I think the conversation through the relationships is really what's key.
And I was going to say that Scott stole my answer, but I'll build on that relationships piece by saying communication. I think that's also really key. Obviously, during COVID, it was difficult to gather people together safely, but actually being in the room together, bringing people together on a regular basis, and starting these conversations and or continuing them, as Scott referenced, I think is really important. And then leveraging technology in that way as well. So we have partners here in North Carolina like Veterans Bridge Home who have amazing searchable databases, because it is amazing how vast the array of resources are between county, state, and VA. There are so many things, but how do you get to them? And who do you call or who do you ask? So I think ways that we can just streamline those communications and build those relationships are what are critical to continuing what's been built thus far.
I'm looking for any more questions. There we go. I think you're on now.
Hello?
Yep.
All right. How y'all doing? Melvin Jackson from Next Stop, from Havelock, North Carolina, on the coach by Cherry Point. My question is, we all identify that the problem is information and getting those veterans the information they need. I see organizations in here I've talked to. What has the working group talked about getting a centralized location, a site or something where veterans can go to get that information? When I transitioned into this job about 2 years ago, I was trying to help my veterans find careers, and I'm looking for job fairs, and unless it's MC for me, that's the only place I could find job fairs from, because nobody updates their calendar. A veteran cannot go to a job fair 30 days out. They don't have that ability to just pop up and go to a job fair. So is there any kind of, I know we all have our individual groups and organizations we work with, but is there anything for somebody to take the lead and coalesce these so we could give it to the veterans? Because we all know, besides resumes, the veteran problem is networking. And so that is my question.
So I see that there are fingers being pointed.
There you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Smith. I spent most of the last 10 years developing the resource platforms you're all speaking about. NC for Vets right here is the state's digital version of the resource guide. The state of North Carolina, I don't know if we have any copies here, produces a 210-page resource guide that has all of this stuff at hand, all the community platforms. Or additionally, NC Serves, ncserves.org. It connects you directly to the care coordination network that will link you with all of these services. So the state of North Carolina has very robust state platforms to support these things.
nc4vets.org, a very good place to start. All kinds of books and magazines. Spent a lot. They're here to get you connected. Any more questions, folks? Right here. Where's the nearest mic? Or you want to speak really loud? Okay. Well, they won't be able to hear you online, though.
Thank you, Janelle. Hi, I'm Kayreen. I work with DMH. I'm the Veteran Services Coordinator there. And so my question would be, although NC Serves, NC for Vets is great, how is that information actually getting out to our transitioning service members? Is it in TAPS at Fort Liberty? How is anyone becoming aware of that information? And, you know, it's not being advertised. You know, I know people who have transitioned over the last few months. I transitioned just 2 years ago. I had no awareness of this information.
So I will tell you, yes, it is offered in the TAPS program. It is advertisement. It's on our Army Community Service website on both Instagram and Facebook, and we've partnered with NWR, so it's actually getting out.
So are those physical books? I'm not trying to say anything negative against you, CSM, but I know people who just went through TAPS at Fort Liberty like 2 months ago. They did not get that information.
And
I know this
and
personally.
that's one of those things I would say it's almost it's there, but it's so much information. My opinion is we've got too much.
I mean, my
information.
son just went through TAPS, so he didn't get that. I told him about it, and I gave him the manual.
Maybe a helpful note from the side here.
Just saying.
Yeah, so I just retired, and it was pounded into my head multiple times going through TAP and going through every time I went to this older support center. So I saw it probably
maybe,
twice a day for
I don't
about
know.
6 months.
So I'm just saying that some things fall through the cracks.
Absolutely.
And so
agree
we just need to
100%,
make sure that it is really getting out to all service members across the board.
Well, I think one of the things that I've seen is that during transition out is not the time to absorb any of the information. So we have this great TAP program, and we just fire hose information at people as they're transitioning out, and they say, wow, I'd really like a water bottle, right? Not a fire hose coming at me. Then they get out and go, oh, poop emoji, right? Like, what am I going to do now? And where do I get the help? And it's at that point that we need the consolidated resources, I think. Yeah. And their entry point may be 1,000 different places. And I think that's the piece for me,
We need
right?
to have a continuous.
Right. Where is it going to be? Is it at their community college? Is it at their doctor's office? Is it at their church? Is it at one of our veteran service organizations?
Advertising.
Where are they going, oh my gosh, I need help? Is it through the police department, wherever it is? And are we giving them that same resource where people are different on-ramps, but they're all getting to that same information? And I think right now, at least my experience, because we sell Fayetteville Tech Community College through, hey, come study with us. And people go, and then 18 months later, they go, oh man, I need something, and I don't know how to do this, and let me go through it. And, you ask them, did you sit through TAP? And they go, oh yeah, but I wasn't really listening. I wanted to get out of the military. That's the goal. And so I think it's human behavior, right? Hey, my goal right now is to get out. Now, when I need the information, we've got to be there with it. And I think, figuring that out as a working group, how can we do a better job at sharing together wherever that on-ramp is?
And to have that continuous information, agreed. And then a follow-up question in a totally different arena. Dr. Vair, you had some really good information about providing information about the VA to our veterans who are eligible for the VA care. What are we doing to ensure that large population of veterans who are not eligible for VA care so that they know about the resources that are available for them when it comes to especially that mental health care?
Yeah, it's really difficult when veterans don't qualify for VA care to help them, because again, it comes down to community. I think that was, in short, what Scott was offering, is that really we have these wraparound resources. We help veterans connect to, say, Veterans Bridge Home, who is resourced for those folks who don't necessarily have access to VA. So I think, again, in the state of North Carolina, even those veteran service offices, if they aren't able to help a veteran get service connection, for example, they can still help them with identifying what's local. So I'd say our veteran service offices at the county level, and then organizations like Veterans Bridge Home are really great places to send our veterans who aren't eligible for VA healthcare.
Great, thank you.
Okay, folks, I think we did it. We had a great conversation. It's open,
Absolutely.
honest, unwieldy, something. Other side of the room. Here we go. Hold on. One more, Amy.
Oh, right. Just a statement. So working in the community is really hard to keep track of what events are happening, especially job fairs and things like that. So we have found, because this comes up in our meetings all the time, is how do we share that information so everybody can have access to it? We have settled on using What's Happening in Fayetteville and Watch Out Cumberland County, because almost 80% of individuals who live within this county is using either one of those pages. So organizations like mine, we will post what events are happening on those pages. And then also Alliance Health, right here in Cumberland County, is an amazing resource. They know what's going on everywhere, because all events and organizations that works with them within this community is connected with Alliance Health. And anytime we have an event or a job fair or anything like that going on, it is shared with Alliance Health. So it's always good to kind of try and contact them or even check their website, because they will post those on there.
Boom. More great answers. Out here making connections. Let me thank our panel, Dr. Christina Vair, Command Sergeant Major Greg Seymour, and the great Scot McCosh from Fayetteville Tech. Thank you all, and thank you all for being a wonderful audience. That is our panel.
Thank you, panel. And Al is not here, correct? Al's not here with CVEP update, so we're going to move on. Mental health first aid. We have several organizations in the state that receive the Staff Sergeant Fox grant, and under that grant, mental health first aid classes are available. We will have one in Wake County next Wednesday, almost said Saturday. Mecklenburg County has allowed me to come down and teach that class. I am now a mental health first aid instructor, so I'm really excited. I look forward to going down to Wake next Wednesday and doing that. Next Thursday, the Governor's Challenge, Mission Changing Lives Together, will be meeting in Wake County between starting at 9 o'clock. At the Governor's Institute. If you are interested in joining us for the Governor's Challenge to prevent suicide among service members, veterans, and their families, we will be hosting a quarterly meeting at the Governor's Institute. See me, I have cards, and I am glad to forward you the invitation. We would love to have you. Also, the Governor's Challenge and Mission Changing Lives Together has launched a Be a Battle Buddy program. You can scan this little QR code and you can have access to the Psych Armor classes that will help you to gain military culture. If you do 500 minutes of those Psych Armor classes, we will award you an Expert Companion coin that was designed by the former Janine McGee, who helped develop this program. And so we would love for you to log in to veterans.mecnc.gov and become an expert companion, be a good battle buddy. So thank you so much. Also, North Carolina Veterans, A Legacy of Service, NC for Vets, and the Triangle Business Journal have teamed up for a special insert in their latest edition and features the Governor's Working Group and an NC veteran-run business and other pressing issues that impact our military community. Please pick up your copy at the Governor's Institute table in the back. Any other announcements or upcoming events? No. All right. Do I have one? I have one.
Yeah, we're co-sponsoring with several other organizations at Veterans Bridge Home, suicide prevention dinner tomorrow night. It's over off Cliffdale Road.
You can come up. You can come on up and make it, because I think we're cut. We're cut.
Starts tomorrow at 4:30 off Cliffdale Road in the Manna Church University Special Events Building. We also work with other organizations on mental health training several times throughout the year. So any organizations that want to participate in that is something free that's available all across the state. And we also have Veterans Benefit Live going on right now in Cary the next 3 days. So that's a great place, one-stop shop for service members to get support directly on site, one-on-one help with any of their benefits questions or challenges that they're having. And then I'm local here. I used to work with Hiring Our Heroes and with Veterans Bridge Home now. Anything I can do locally to support your service members, spouses with employment needs, happy to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate you. Again, that's in Cary, Veteran Benefits Live. We had one in Mecklenburg County last month. We saw over 1,100 veterans in 3 days. So please, if you have a chance to stop by, it's a wonderful event. Thank you all for coming out. We will definitely send out in our email when the next Governor's Working Group will convene. Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon.